Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary, for being here today. I know it's been a long morning, and certainly we appreciate you being here to answer some really tough questions. But I think questions that are important to have for the American people to know what their government is doing and how it's placing their interests first, finally, and caring about the sovereignty and safety and security and stability of this country. And I know President Trump came in on day one and said, we're taking this back. We've just witnessed years and years of devastation to our communities as a result of a president who was asleep at the wheel or allowed the radicals to run the White House and just pretty much abolished ICE, abolished Border Patrol, basically. I mean, just in your understanding, I know you have previously served as a congresswoman, as a governor, but just in your understanding, have you ever seen anything like the dereliction of duty by a president as it relates to immigration and the safety of a nation?
No, it was alarming, and under that invasion, every state was a border state. Even though I was from South Dakota and the governor there, we were the first state to deploy National Guard down to help support Texas in their efforts to keep our country safe, because we saw millions of people coming into this country unvetted. We saw other countries sending their criminals and emptying out their prisons and their mental health institutes and sending people to our country to make them our problem and to deal with and to try to protect our American citizens from any crimes that they would commit. So that's why I took this job, and why I'm blessed and honored that President Trump has asked me to do this job, is because I get the chance every single day to try to stop the damage that invasion has corrected and to try to make sure that America is safe here on our homeland.
Your predecessor sat right there in front of this committee. I sure wish I would have been on this committee at the time. At the time, I was the Florida Attorney General dealing with the effects and consequences, the jeopardy to the safety of Floridians as a result of President Biden and his policies. But your predecessor, Mayorkas, sat right there and said under oath that the border was secure and that they were following the laws. And in fact, when I knew with my team, my great team in Florida, not only within the Attorney General's office, but with the sheriffs across the state, local law enforcement, they saw what was happening. They saw the trafficking of children. They saw the peddling of poison in our communities. They saw what was happening as a result of an unencumbered border, a non-existent border, and the effects it was having in our state. I saw that firsthand. In fact, President Biden came in, and in his policies, and I think it's really important that we put this in perspective, because we have some families here today with us that have lost loved ones. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for reminding us of the duty that we owe the American people to protect them through our policies, and not just adopting good policies like here in the Congress, but making sure they are faithfully executed and enforced by the executive branch, which is what the Constitution requires of our president. And so I appreciate you being here and reminding us all of the solemn responsibility and duties that we owe you. And we owe every American out there that's trusted us with these roles. President Biden came in and upended precedent of Democratic and Republican presidents. And that precedent was to deport those here illegally that had committed felony crimes, from trafficking to violent crimes to other types of crimes where they would have been deported. They stopped doing that. They reversed that policy. We also saw policies at the border that required more and more people to be pushed in. I would say, and I said many times, they are requiring a certain number of people every day to be pushed in, quotas, and they were demanding that they process faster until vetting was practically non-existent. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember that anywhere between 11 million and the 20 million people that came in, we were talking about the fact that encountered people were on the terrorist watch list, had been murderers, had been rapists, had been drug traffickers. We had encountered those people that were trying to come in. But can you acknowledge, and do you remember, that there were many gotaways, millions, that we have no idea their background? We have no idea why they didn't walk up and go to the welcoming committee, which was what President Biden rolled out. We don't know their backgrounds, and we don't know where they are today. Is that correct?
Yes, and because the Biden administration pulled Border Patrol agents off the border and used them to process people and to feed people and to move paperwork, great chunks of our border had no surveillance at all. There was no security on other chunks of our border, and the cartel used that as a mechanism to divert attention. They would push thousands of people across the border in locations so that the other part of the border miles down could be exposed and they could move their human trafficking and their drugs across the border unimpeded. The Biden administration facilitated that. Gave the cartels exactly what they needed to enrich themselves, to commit their crimes, to build themselves up and perpetuate more violence. And that's why we're dealing with cartels now that are foreign terrorist organizations that are everywhere in this country. Years ago, you wouldn't even heard of foreign gangs like MS-13 or TDA. In fact, TDA didn't have a presence.
Taking over apartment complexes.
Yes, absolutely.
But we sure saw that during the Biden administration.
Yeah, Jocelyn
and in addition
Nungry.
to breaking down any sense of border, pushing more and more in, more and more, to where the Border Patrol said they were telling us they were asking us for our advice how not to stop it, but how they could process faster. They also built programs to make it easier during that surge, overwhelming surge, using apps to make it easier to come over here. And many of those folks were not vetted. In fact, we found them committing crimes in our nation after they came over on the app. Is that correct?
That is
An app
correct.
I alleged was illegal and couldn't be done. But yet they pushed forward, even though we were experiencing a historic surge and influx at our border. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
In fact, some Democratic states even had to declare an emergency based on Biden's policies and what was going on, right?
That is correct.
And they declared an emergency and they demanded more money from the administration because they couldn't keep pace with the emergency that the Democratic President Biden and his radical handlers created.
Correct.
And at the same time as Florida Attorney General, I got calls from around my state that drug traffickers that were prosecuted here that were not American citizens, but they were incarcerated in federal prisons. So I want to underscore this. The only reason they're in America is because they were drug traffickers. They were not American citizens. We brought them here. We prosecuted them here. And they were serving an incarcerative portion of their sentence. And after that, instead of deporting them back to their country after they did that, they were pushing them back into the communities where they were prosecuted, even though they weren't citizens. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you know that during that time period, when I pressed for information on who they were and where they were going and where they were being pushed, do you know that they stymied our efforts and would not give us that information? Would you say that what you are faced with as a secretary is unlike any successor has had to deal with in terms of cleaning up a dangerous, threatening situation created by their predecessor?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not just the illegal immigration situation. It's the crime. It's the amount of individuals in this country that wish to do us harm that they let in, the amount of known and suspected terrorists that we know are here that we need to find and remove before they perpetuate harm on this country, to the neglect at FEMA, the politicization of FEMA, how they only did disaster response to individuals who aligned with the Democratic Party and their ideals and ignored other families who were suffering and had lost everything. What we saw as far as not investing in Secret Service and TSA and intelligence and analysis. And then CISA was manipulated and censoring people's First Amendment rights. It was deciding what was misinformation and disinformation and trying to manipulate election outcomes, and that has been fixed. So under the 23 agencies.
How important is it? In Florida, I was so proud of my state. When we had an administration that came in and said, we're going to put the American interest safety first again. And it was so clear who supports that at the State of the Union.
Yep.
Every one of the counties, 67 counties in my state signed up and said, we will help you. We will enter in agreements with you. We will help you track these people down that should not be here, that have committed crimes. We will work with you. I, as a senator, said, let's get you money to help reimburse them for those efforts. Does that make a difference? And did you see a difference in the way you engaged with states and the stability and safety of all involved when you didn't have people working with you hand in hand?
Oh, absolutely. And we're thrilled. We have over 1,400 law enforcement agreements through the 287G program at the state and local level that have partnered with us to do operations to address public safety threats and to get them out of communities. And those individuals that are local law enforcement are critical partners in the success and safety of the American people.
And I would just ask for you to keep engaging with those sheriffs of the local communities, asking how they think best to safely do these operations. I think
Just spent yesterday with all of our sheriffs, with
That's
all
great
four
to hear.
associations and hundreds of sheriffs, thanking them for the work they do.
Thank you for being here.
Senator Schiff.